Rian Kutsia Fortis, Proactive Defense Solutions. Tonight, I am speaking to Glenn Howell, again, one of the senior instructors of the Lone Operator course. We're going to be doing a three-part series. This is the first of 3 parts on popular firearm myths. Glenn, good evening and welcome.
Hey, Rian, thank you. Glad to be back. Looking forward to it.
There we go. It's probably time that we bust some of these myths. Some of them have been hanging around for far too long. Just for the viewers, the idea with this is not to try and get snarky about anything. The idea is to try and educate. So feel free to give us your opinions in the comments. We look forward to hearing from you. Glenn, I think let's kick off with one of the popular ones that you see on social media on a very regular basis, and that's carrying hollow points. Apparently, it's illegal to carry hollow points.
Yeah, that's one that we hear on the range quite often, and we do try to address it as often as we hear it, and even preemptively. So, to lay it out straight, it is not illegal. There is no reason why you cannot carry hollow points. A very simple way to look at it from a legal perspective, of course, is if you can buy it at a proper registered gun shop, it's not illegal. There's no law that says that you can't carry it. In fact, it's not mentioned at all. And I would actually go one step further, and I would say that it is probably the responsible thing to do for a lot of folks to carry the hollow points or the expanding ammunition. The idea behind it is that it's safer, because once you've potentially hit a target, if you're under attack and you are forced to draw your firearm and use your firearm and you end up shooting, you are responsible for where those rounds end up. And if those bullets go through your attacker and hit someone else, you are liable for whatever damage, for whatever happens there, injury, death, who knows what may happen. And the idea with the hollow points is that the energy is absorbed with the first sort of impact, the first impacts that it hits, and it's less likely to go through that individual and onwards. So obviously your shot placement is key and making sure of your shot, but it's less likely to pass through that person and potentially hit someone else. So myth busted. It's by no means illegal, and I would say definitely a responsible option for folks to consider.
Mm. What do you do if you get stopped? Because this is the argument that we see very often. You get stopped by the police somewhere, and a policeman tells you that you are not supposed to carry those rounds. It's illegal.
I think I'm obviously no legal expert, but in any scenario where you are stopped by the police and potentially sort of firearms related, I think the number one thing is to keep your cool in the situation. And really, my advice would be to go along with them. So what I mean by that is, if they say, well, this is illegal, and we're going to arrest you for it, let's go along with that. Let's not now fall foul of the law by resisting arrest, which is a serious charge. If you turn around and you push back to the cops and they potentially take it as you're resisting arrest, or there's something physical there, you don't need that. And certainly the great legal minds that we do have within the lone operator community, I think, have provided a lot of guidance and advice on this subject. Go with them. Let's deal with it at the station. That would be my certain take on it, with full confidence. And if you want to confiscate it, confiscate it. Let's go and have that conversation where it needs to be had, because I'm 100% confident no one can charge me with anything. I've done nothing wrong. If I get caught with hollow points, as I said.
So in other words, even if it means giving up those hollow points that you've got in your magazine, rather do that and sort the mess out afterwards, instead of trying to get into a huge argument with the cops on the ground. That honestly just gets you nowhere, I don't think.
Yeah, I think so. And whether the police officer is acting with genuine intent, and what I mean by that is potentially that the cops' idea is that they are illegal, or whether, and there are instances where we see, that the policeman might be just giving you a hard time. We do see stories like that sort of come out every now and again. How you differentiate between the two, I don't know. But yeah, I'm not going to get into it on the ground, not at all. If you want to confiscate them, confiscate them. I'd sure like them back. They're really expensive. Yeah, not going to get into it. I'm not going to make a situation worse, you know.
Exactly. Yes. So the correct answer to that is that carrying hollow points is not illegal.
Correct.
Glenn, I actually spoke to him in the week who mentioned that he cleans his gun. He shoots fairly regular, but he cleans his gun after every single shooting session. Is that necessary?
In my opinion, no. And I know a lot of the other instructors and shooters would agree with me. And it's maybe a little bit more nuanced than that, because modern firearms are quite fine to run quite dirty. There's quite a lot of tests that the manufacturers have done where they've run thousands of rounds through modern firearms without cleaning them. And there really is no issue. And in fact, some folks even joke that they run better, and it might not be a joke, a little bit dirty. And you know, the problem is if your focus is on cleaning, there's two problems that come up, especially with over cleaning. So, you know, I get it. Guys want to look after it. It's expensive. Yes, it's a tool. All right. And we want people to use it as a tool, but it's an expensive tool and it can take years to get. So I understand why people are cautious around it, but your risks are over cleaning, where you can actually overwear surfaces. There can be sort of pitching that can form. You can produce excessive wear. A lot of the manufacturers will tell you this if you're going to have conversations with them around over cleaning. So the problem is guys potentially feel this need to really do a really detailed scrub, clean of the firearm with gun oils and those kind of things after shooting, which, you know, in that sense is potentially excessive from a wear perspective. But what's more important, and it's actually what gets neglected, is the sort of thick grease-based lubricant that needs to be placed on firearms. It's a regular conversation we have on the range with students where you know, I'll show them hands. Hey, who cleans their gun? Put their hands up. We don't go into how much cleaning, but then I say, well, you know, who's putting a lubricant on the slides? You know, the slide and sort of where it's connecting on the rail, and making sure that the working parts, the real fast-moving parts, have got a thick grease-based substance to actually protect for that wear. And it's very few. You know, very few folks are putting up their hands. So my advice would be to rather look at that. You know, I don't clean my gun very often at all. Maybe once or twice a year, and even then it's not a particularly detailed effort. But I put lubricants on it at least once a month. You know, if I'm on the range, I can feel it getting a little bit sticky or it's very sandy. I want to protect that wear. That for me, far more important. So no, you absolutely don't need to clean a firearm after every single trip to the range. Not a modern firearm.
I mean, you obviously, if the thing fell in the mud or something, then you'll want to clean it. But other than that, just keep it well lubricated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, no one wants to carry it around if it's sort of full of sand and you tap your magazine and there's piles of sand come out. Yeah, I get it. You want to get that out. You know, you don't want to carry that around but beyond that, no.
There might be an advantage in that if you tap on it and a bunch of sand falls out. It might be that any attacker is so amazed by that he forgets what he wanted to do and just stands there and either laughs or cries with you.
Any advantage you can get, I guess.
Glenn, well, again, I suppose that's up to every single firearms owner to make up their own minds, but that's our advice in any case. You know, you don't have to clean it all the time. Let's move on to the next one. 7 rounds is enough to stop any attack. Yes, no. I suppose sometimes it can be.
Yeah, I guess sometimes. I think, you know, for that, it's really a context thing for me. So, you know, within our South African context, just today there was an incident on the N1 in Johannesburg. In fact, the highway was closed. It was a hijacking. And I found out some of the details of that hijacking, and there were, I believe, 3 vehicles involved on the hijacker's side, apart from the vehicle that they were going after, which is at least 3 drivers and I believe 2 occupants in each other vehicle. So now we're talking somewhere between 6 and 9 attackers coming for a hijacked vehicle. So what am I getting to? Well, if you're only carrying 7 rounds on you, there's a few problems with that. One, in our context in South Africa, and not just with hijackings, home invasions, you name, you are most likely facing multiple attackers. We're not sitting in the States where you're dealing with as they call it, these active shooter scenarios where someone's going into a public area and what's going on there. It's not the scenario that we're in. It's a crime scenario where people are attacked in mass. 4, 5, 6 attackers is not uncommon. So 7 rounds, how far is that going to get you? Well, in a scenario like that, not far enough. Keeping in mind, under stress, not every shot is going to hit where you need it to hit. You're going to miss.
Exactly.
You are likely going to miss. Your shooting capability deteriorates tremendously under stress. Apart from that, too, the greater magazine capacity that you have, the less likely it is that you will need to reload. And if you think about it, once again, in a stressful scenario, not your shooting deteriorates, but so does everything else from a fine motor control. So things like mag changes. If you don't need to change mags, you're less likely to fumble a mag change. You've only got 7 rounds, you're more likely to need to change mags, which introduces more likelihood of a fumble. So I think from a South African context, I guess 7 rounds is better than none. But certainly sure. I'd want to carry a whole lot more.
I mean, it might well be that you shoot 1 round and you hit maybe one guy and they turn and run. That's definitely not impossible, but it's not something that I'm going to want to rely on. I'd rather play safe. That'd rather be safe than sorry situation.
Exactly. The extra magazine capacity, I'd take capacity over caliber any day, and spare mags and shot placement. Yeah.
Let's move on to another one, which is I've got a lot of opinions on this one. SubCompacts and snubbies, like your old 2-inch barrel 38 specials are the best guns for women. What do you think about that? I can see by your smile, but let's elaborate, shall we?
So, I think it's a great question, and you see it all the time, right? Especially when sort of the husband and wife teams come to the range. He's got call it a big gun. Very often she's got a much smaller firearm, and I mean small in size, potentially same kind of caliber, and that really is the crux of the issue here. So on the outset, no, I don't think it's a good idea. In that the lady should have smaller guns, but we'll talk about that in a second. But if we go back to what is the sort of the mechanics and the physics around these guns. If her gun is really small, let's talk about the SubCompact first, and it's a 9mm parabellum, and contrast that with maybe a full size sort of handgun, also a 9mm parabellum. So the cartridge is the same, right? And the round that's coming out the barrel is the same, but the physical gun is much smaller in these SubCompacts. Now, this introduces a bunch of problems that the bigger gun doesn't have to the same extent. The biggest of which is obviously recoil. A bigger gun has more mass. It has more inertia. There's just more weight to it. So when that gun fires and the slide sort of cycles and you have this recoil and this felt recoil, the bigger gun naturally absorbs a lot more of that recoil than the smaller gun does. So, you hear people talk about a smaller gun sometimes being snappy. That's where it comes from. It's the increase in felt recoil. Now, if we're saying that a woman should have a smaller gun, I don't know, is it because her hands are smaller, or maybe, generally women are not as strong as men. Okay, so if a woman is not as strong as a man, why are we giving her a gun that is harder to control because it has more felt recoil? It's literally the exact opposite of the direction we should be going in. We should be saying, hold on, a bigger gun is easier to control. You're going to be able to put more shots on top, but you're going to have less of sort of impact of this felt recoil by using a full-size firearm, or at least a larger firearm. At the same time, the sort of the trigger control, often you find on these SubCompacts, a lot of them don't have the greatest triggers. And again, that's also true with a number of the snubbies that you mentioned. Some are great, depends on how they work. Some are not too great. But the disadvantages certainly outweigh the advantages for me. Switching over to the sort of the revolvers and the snubbies, I mean, the argument is that it's simpler. I mean, open up the handle and have a look how that thing works. It's not that simple. Malfunctions can happen, in a revolver. So that's the one argument. The other, of course, is that again, the trigger pull on some of those is can be a lot harder than a modern striker-fired sort of pistol, and the more challenging trigger pull introduces the more sort of likelihood of misses, which is again the opposite of what we want. And at the same time, we're now limited again by capacity. What have we got? 5, 6 shots versus. I guess it's not as bad as the subcompact. The subcompact is typically sitting with 10. But if you carry a fairly compact weapon like a Glock 19, you've easily got sort of 15, 17 rounds, depending on your sort of configuration. So the disadvantages, the small gun thing, it really doesn't make much sense. Sometimes I think personally it's a bit of an ego thing. The husband saying, hey, you get the smaller gun, I get the bigger gun, I'm the bigger guy.
Yep.
And it's exactly the wrong way around. You are disadvantaging her. I think then sometimes the argument comes out that the smaller guns are easier to conceal. Yes, but there are tremendously good holsters and techniques. I know a lot of the lady Fortis instructors, lone operator instructors have gone into this topic in detail. It's fantastic. I mean, they're ladies are carrying these dresses and they're wearing these dresses and carrying full-size firearms, and you can't see anything. They practice those draws, and I mean, you're going to get quite a surprise, and then that gun's going to come out and you're done. So don't let the concealment scare you away either.
Well, just for the viewers on that specific point, we did some time ago do a 2 or 3-part series about concealment carry for ladies, very specifically. And I had a chat there with Tonine and with Claire, 2 of the instructors, the lady instructors on the lone operator course. And if you want to know more about that topic, just go find those videos. I think you will find it very enlightening indeed. Glenn, thanks. I think that answers that question and hopefully busts the myth. Now, holsters. And again, every so often this question pops up on firearms platforms or pages on social media about these magnetic car holsters to keep your gun in the car. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I personally am not a fan, and I'll give you my reasons. So from a legal perspective, South African law is quite particular that the firearm has to be in a safe or under your personal control. So there's maybe a question there for me. I don't believe anything's been tested in case law, but there's a question there for me that if that firearm is on this sort of magnetic mount in my car, is it under my direct control? I don't know. That's not really the biggest problem, though. The biggest problem for me is in almost any scenario, from a motor vehicle accident to needing that firearm in a hijacking, for me, it's in exactly the wrong place. In a motor vehicle accident, if you've ever been in something like that, you'll know that so someone sort of comes into you, slams into your car. You've got that moment where you've got the body alarm reaction. Talk about that, within shooting scenarios. But in a motor vehicle accident, is exactly the same. And your body dumps with adrenaline. You've got this tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, and now you also have a gun flapping around in a car somewhere that has also, potentially been knocked off that mount. I don't know. Maybe you knocked it off that mount within that accident. Where is that gun? Where is it now? Is it lying in the floor well? Has it moved out? Who knows? You potentially in a daze get out of that car. Again, where is that gun? And then the real sort of cherry on the top for me is in a hijacking scenario. Our hijackers and our criminals in this country, they're not silly. They know what they're doing. They're professionals at what they do. Those guys are looking for guns, all right? And your gun in some sort of mount like that is a lot easier to see for them. They're going to notice it. My concern would be, again, in a hijacking scenario, if all of a sudden there's a gun in my face and I'm going for that, my instinct, system would go for that, I think I'm quite likely to get shot. If the gun is on me, if I'm carrying the gun safely on my person, in any of the scenarios that we've spoken about here, motor vehicle accident, hijacking, whatever the case, even an emergency where I see something and I need to get out the car quite quickly, but the gun's on me and it's under my control, right? I immediately exit the vehicle. If it's a hijacking, it's not so obvious that I'm armed. And again,
Yes.
whether that means that I use it or not, obviously in a hijacking, take the vehicle. I'm not interested in turning that into anything beyond that, but at least I have the option. Whereas I think I leave a lot of those options on the table with a firearm sort of potentially sitting there in some sort of magnetic mount where I lose all the advantage. So yeah, not a fan.
I'm just thinking of another scenario, which is human nature. At some stage, something is going to distract you for whatever reason, and you are going to forget that gun in its magnetic holster when you get out, or you're just going to get lazy. You stop at the Spar quickly, and you just have to run in because your wife asked you to pick up milk on the way home and you're in a rush, and I'm just going to quickly run in and leave it in the car. There are car guards after all. If they get into your car, whether they steal it or just get into the car and get your gun in that fashion, you have a big problem. So I fully agree with you. Not a fan at all.
Yeah. I think you lose a firearm under negligent circumstances. Yeah. So
you better have good legal representation because you're going to need it. That is a fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in the video series here on YouTube, we talk about firearms training all the time, and as part of that, dry firing comes up all the time because it's so important. I even did a full series with Drew Wildenboer not too long ago about dry firing. We took a deep dive into dry firing, and we got some good feedback from that. But there are still people out there who believe that dry firing damages your gun. What do you think?
So, short answer, no. But there are some minor caveats we'll get into. As you mentioned, as a training tool, and not to go too much into that, I know we've done a bunch of videos on that with Rue, and I'm in full agreement. Dry firing for me is a tremendous training aid for all reasons. You can really maintain your skill, you can develop skill. Absolutely critical for me to maintain an almost daily dry firing program. So no. Modern handguns are designed to be dry fired. There's no issue with it, especially the center fire ammunition. We'll talk about that in a second, but certainly no issue, no damage caused to the firearm. I personally, I don't know, I know thousands upon thousands of dry fire clicks, through my firearm with absolutely no issue whatsoever, no concerns. There are, if you're one of those individuals that is concerned about it, you can get things like snap caps, it's almost like a little dummy that goes into the chamber, and when the firing pin or striker comes forward and strikes the back of the snap cap, the impact is absorbed by a little spring. So if you're concerned about it, you can get something like that. But again, it's really not necessary. The dry firing as a discipline is critical for you to get to that level, and you're not going to damage your gun. The only potential exception, if a manufacturer were to say to you, hey, don't do it for whatever reason, not that modern firearm manufacturers are doing that, I would listen to that. I would put a snap cap in there.
Sure.
But anyone firing sort of the rim fire ammunition, typically the .22 rounds, because what happens there is the firing pin comes forward, and instead of striking the center of the prime in the middle of the cartridge, what happens is it strikes the rim. Now, if there's no cartridge in the chamber, the firing pin will actually come forward and start striking on the chamber, directly on the chamber. And in that instance, you can start to damage it. You can, well, both. You can slightly bend or peen the firing pin, or you can actually, I guess, make a small dent within that chamber. So you can introduce issues in a firearm like that. So things like the Glock 44, I think, is a .22. There, you need to be a little bit more careful with those calibers. Get your snap caps and don't damage your firearm. But center fire stuff, which is the majority of certainly self-defense rounds, you're not going to have an issue.
So bottom line, this is a myth. Don't let it deter you from doing dry firing. Dry firing is super important. understand what you're dealing with and get the solution and do dry firing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will stand. What was those famous last words? Finish and claw. We'll go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have a safe full of guns. There are handguns and there are shotguns and there are AR platforms and there are AK platforms, bolt action rifles, because I happen to be a hunter as well. My safe is stocked legally. I don't have to carry my gun around when I'm at home watching movies on Netflix, because I'm going to have sufficient time to get to my safe, find the key, open the safe, get a gun out, potentially find the magazines, because I may be keeping the magazines separate from the firearms, get it loaded, get it ready, and be ready to defend myself. And I'll do that in time. I don't think.
We hear this one quite often on the range too, especially with sort of the newer students that join us. And there's a lot of reasons for it, that I won't go into sort of too many of those, but we do hear it, folks, that, the firearm lives in the safe. And the problem with that, again, we need to look at the context of the country that we live in. Crime doesn't send you a note. A criminal doesn't send you an invitation saying, look, at this point, I'm going to attack you. And the problem is that these attacks are over in seconds, not minutes. Many of them are over in seconds in your home. If you think that you have time to go to that safe, punch in a little code, find your key, under duress, right? Under some sort of pressure, some sort of scenario where there's someone in your house, someone's in your house, throwing people around, pointing guns at people. Maybe they've already started shooting. There's blood, there's screaming. It's pure chaos. If you think you're going to have the presence of mind and the time to go to that safe and retrieve that firearm and actually make a difference in that scenario, I think you're fooling yourself. One of the things that I've heard said on the range, and it really struck me the first time I heard it, was that 100% of home invasions happen in the home. You need to accept that these things do happen. They happen in our homes. It's a reality. Yes, we obviously want security and these kind of layers of security as we talk about, but it does happen sometimes that you are surprised. And you see this happening all the time in the news, and all of a sudden there are attackers in your home. So I think,
if you run your business from home, if you see customers on your premises, you don't always know exactly who the customer is. So maybe in the process, you're letting the guy in, who's going to rob you. You just don't know. Not in South Africa, you don't know. If your firearm is not on your person because you're at work, even though you're at home, you're at work, and you'd rather not do that because you're seeing customers or whatever the reason is. I think it's something that can totally bite you in the ass, and I don't think you want that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're giving yourself a massive disadvantage. Yeah, I mean, is it great that a lot of us feel like we have to walk around our houses armed all the time? No. Is it a reality of the country we live in? I feel like in many cases, yes. Yeah, so for me, it's no good. The firearm in a safe is no use. I literally have seconds in a scenario, in a situation like that. I have seconds. I don't have time. There is no time to go and make ready.
On that point, carrying my gun only if I go into dangerous areas, and other than that, I don't.
Yeah.
And this happens. I understand, you're not always going into a place that is necessarily easy or allowed to conceal carry. But I think it's a bit of a dangerous game if you start playing odds here and making these choices. Okay, I'm going here, I'm going to that place, I'm not gonna carry today. I'll carry tomorrow. Or I'm going into an area that I consider dangerous. I don't even know if there are areas in South Africa anymore that you should consider so safe that you would need to not have a means of defense on yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think we sometimes have these ideas that crime occurs in these dangerous areas. Oh, you're going into the CBD. Sure, that there is an increased likelihood. We see these videos on CCTV, but the reality is that you're not going to have any forewarning. I mean, go and have a look at the stats. People are attacked in their driveways, in their suburbs, their supposedly secure suburbs. You're at the coffee shop, you're at the drive-through. There's a hijacking, and in shopping malls and these vehicle thefts. These things happen because the criminals are going to come to where the opportunity is, to where whatever it is that they're after is. This idea of only carrying in a dangerous area, you can't be selective about. You're not the one who's choosing when this is going to go down. To put it very plainly, it's like choosing when you're going to wear a seatbelt. I mean, wear it because you don't know when you're going to have an accident. If you think, okay, now I'm a little bit more dangerous, I'm going to put a seatbelt on. No one in a motor vehicle accident thought it was going to happen to them. No one. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been there at that time. And yet, just in every city in South Africa, we have hundreds every day because these things happen to you when you don't expect it. And I think very much the same with carrying a firearm. If you're going to carry, be diligent, be consistent, be aware, and understand that there is no location where criminals are not looking for opportunities and for potential targets.
I think for me, it's about creating a habit, and the more you start making excuses not to have the firearm on you, the easier it's going to become to just rather leave it, because let's be honest, it's a hassle, because you have to dress around it. So it's a hassle. I'm going to just say it's a pain in the butt, very more often than not. But if you don't make a habit of it, then that gun is most probably going to end up gathering dust in your safe, which is kind of pointless.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think rather, put in the effort to get comfortable with your carry, sorry, we dropped out there for a sec. And as you say, make it a habit, work around it, figure out how to carry it so it's comfortable for you and you know how to use it. Yeah.
Now we get to a hot potato, and it's been a hot potato for forever. Carrying one up versus carrying empty chamber. Now, just on this point, honestly, me personally, I'm kind of over it. I don't really care if you want to carry empty chamber or not. That's your choice. If you feel you can handle it, that's fine by me. But on our side, we are proponents of carrying one up and not carrying empty chamber. So if you differ from that, you're welcome to differ from that. But that's the way we feel about things on this side. And I'd like to just, get your opinions on that, working with people on the range on a continuous basis.
Yeah, that is a great one, and it's interesting, and not a lot of students, but there's certainly a percentage in every intake that will start the lone operator course, and they'll tell us, I don't carry one up, I carry empty chamber, and we typically find by roughly the fourth or fifth module they've made that change, and as you say
themselves,
yeah, they've made the change. They've made the change. We don't say thou shall. That's certainly not our approach. It's important that people understand more aspects around the decision that they're making, and we try to. I guess we can sort of elaborate on a couple of these problems. So most people are those that are carrying empty chamber. They're quite happy to accept that in some sort of scenario, in some sort of attack, it's going to take them longer to get this because someone else can just draw. I mean, that just doesn't make sense, right? that's another step. It simply must take longer. But the majority of people are happy to accept that empty chamber is going to take longer. But the sort of the eye openers for them are more the what if scenarios. So what if in this scenario where you really have to put your skills to the test and your empty chamber to the test, you only have one arm or one hand to manipulate that firearm. And it doesn't mean that the other arm is injured. It could mean that you're grabbing a child and pulling a child behind you, or moving your wife or husband or whoever out of the way, and the free hand, the gun hand, is the one that has to do the work. It's a lot harder to rack that gun now with one hand. And the students get to experience this, and they see the challenges that come up. Apart from that, you are also potentially introducing malfunctions that I don't have to deal with if I carry one up. So I draw the firearm, I know I'm good to go. We're in battery, there's no issue. I know that I have a round chamber. If you have to draw that firearm and rack it and get a round chamber and get that gun ready to fire, by very definition of having to do that, you are potentially introducing a malfunction before the fight is even started. Some sort of poor rack. Who knows? Maybe you unseat or something like that. You end up with a double feed because you rack twice or something strange. These things happen. People react in weird ways under stress. So there's all these different things to consider. It's not just speed. It's how much mobility will you have? How many hands are you actually going to have to hold onto this gun? Right? Are you going to be able to get that second hand out? Are you going to potentially introduce malfunctions? And yes, even on the draw, you can consistently test on the range. You have less time if you have to draw that firearm and rack. So I think that the answer there for us, and obviously as we're big proponents of it, is carry one up and train one up, train in a safe fashion, and make sure that you've got a good holster that covers the trigger guard, so that when you draw, that your fingers are not getting in there. You're not going to have some. Make sure that firearm is coming out and it's clear, completely safe. There's no concern with that. And even simple things like when you're holstering, don't be sloppy about it. You're holstering a loaded firearm. Don't just kind of guess where the holster is. Even in a scenario, you've got plenty of time to holster properly. Look it into the holster. It's something that we teach students. Have a look. Make sure there isn't clothing, some sort of drawstring, some sort of issue there. So yeah, I think sort of that from a safety perspective, I think from a carry and safety perspective, there's absolutely no concern again to carry your handgun responsibly one up. And from a fight perspective, there's only advantage as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we will also be in, because you remember, for the viewers, I said it's a 3-part series. This is part 1. So in either part 2 or 3, I can't recall offhand now, we will be addressing the carry positions, which goes along with this specific point as well. Glenn, the last one for part 1, stopping power as opposed to man stoppers. What is the difference?
Yeah, that's an interesting one that sort of comes up. So, a lot of the thinking and especially within law enforcement circles, in earlier days coming out of the States, was this idea that you needed the sort of larger caliber round to be the man stopper, right? So you were going to win a fight by shooting someone with a 40 cal or 45 versus a 9mm or a 9 or short. Something along those lines, and it's certainly, I think this is a debate that it's probably never going to leave, even though there has been quite a lot of work that's been done on it in sort of studying the effects and the results of different caliber rounds within fights. And I mean, the sort of the short of it is that your shot placement is a whole lot more important than the caliber of the round, than these so-called man stoppers, these much larger. Yes, they have more mass, they have more momentum, there's a lot more energy, but the problem comes in that in real world gunfights, and I think it was, actually wrote down the name, and I've read a couple of his research. Greg Elephant, he did a lot of sort of studies in the States around gunfights, and I think he had 1,700 gunfights and scenarios that he assessed, from interviews, police statements, witness statements, autopsy reports, the whole lot. And they looked at this idea of these man stoppers. You need to carry these big caliber rounds, and the results are fascinating. Through all this data, there was no measurable improvement in this idea of a one-shot shot stop if you were carrying this large 45 cal versus a 9mm. No measurable impact improvement. All it came down to was shot placement. So the movement then within, you know, some of the FBI standards, they're a big proponents of what we now, you know, focus on more, which is the shot placement, consistency, and from a caliber perspective, at least from a bullet performance, penetration. There's certainly a lot more to be achieved from penetrating deeper into a target and doing more damage that way than necessarily this much larger round. So the concepts have largely been debunked that you need the much heavier round, which comes with a lot more recoil, of course, a lot more difficult to control. And, you know, as we discussed earlier, your compromise often with the bigger round is you're going to have a smaller capacity. This is obviously linked to sort of the 7-round magazine concept. They all go hand in hand. So, yeah, some very interesting research out there that seems to point to the fact that everything from really 9mm short through to the 45 produces very much the same results, because it's all about shot placement. It's all about making sure that you are hitting those vital areas to get that attack to stop.
You can achieve the same result with a .22. I've actually seen that, even though it's not necessarily the desired caliber, unless you some odd shot, I don't know, assassin. Should I say that on YouTube? We're not assassins.
Then you can't practice your dry firing with the tutors.
Well, there we go. There must be a downside. Okay. Glenn, thank you so much. I'm going to end part 1 there. Just for the viewers, feel free to add your voice in the comments if you differ from something, if you agree, and also if you can think of more. I have a list of 30 or something in total of these myths, as we call it, that we will be discussing in this 3-part series. So maybe I have it covered already and we will be discussing it. Maybe it's something new and I can add it, in which case I will. And also then, if you like the video and you know, we made sense, please press that like button for us, and subscribe to the channel. Help us grow the channel. You know, the bigger the channel, the more people we can reach with our message, and hopefully it's a sane and the type of message that makes people think about these things. And then last thing is, if you want to know more about the lone operator courses that we keep referring to, please click on the link below the video. That will take you to a video that is going to basically describe the whole thing to you. And after that, well, that should answer all your questions, really. But we hope to see you on a range one of these days. Glenn, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. Much appreciated. We'll talk again soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Rian.